And welcome and everyone to this week's episode of Craze's Corner. It's been a while, but we are back. We're going to be talking about guys we like redraft ADPs later today, so make sure you stay tuned. But first, we got a couple of news stories to break down. The first news story, James Robinson has been released by the New England Patriots. He was supposed to be the RB2 to back up Ramondre Stevenson. Maybe you like Ramondre Stevenson a little bit more now. I'm still hesitant to like a New England Patriots running back, but James Robinson is a free agent coming off of a couple injuries. Hopefully he can find himself another job. Another big running back story, Dalvin Cook has been cut by the Minnesota Vikings. He's looking for his new team. The Vikings still owe him about $2 million, so he's got some time to kind of – he's making money whether or not he signs with someone else, so he can wait it out, find that right option. The question is right now, is that going to be a team like the Miami Dolphins? Are we going to see another team jump into the mix for Dalvin Cook? We'll have to wait and see. And the third story, another massive cut. The Arizona Cardinals cut wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins. He's currently visited with the Titans, the Patriots. So we're going to see where he kind of falls in. Fantasy-wise, you hope it's the Chiefs if you have DeAndre Hopkins. If you're hoping for one of the other Chiefs wide receivers to break out, maybe you're hoping he goes elsewhere. But there's definitely a lot of outcomes for this DeAndre Hopkins and Dalvin Cook situation. I want to know where you guys think that these players should land for fantasy, for your own team. Maybe you're a huge Chiefs fan. Let us know why you want these players. You can download the MEedia app. It's a virtual press conferencing app that allows you to host a virtual press conference from your phone. You can let us know DeAndre Hopkins, Dalvin Cook. Do you want your team to sign them? Do you not? Maybe you have them in a dynasty league. And you're like, I really hope DeAndre Hopkins is a Chief because him and Patrick Mahomes would be unstoppable. You can let us know. You can check it out on the Google Play and the App Store. And now let's welcome our guests, Zach from Ocean State and Will with MEedia. Welcome in, guys. How are we doing?
Excellent, sir. How are you?
I'm all right. Will, you are muted, so we cannot hear anything you say.
I'm doing good.
You're doing good? All right, so we got a Dolphins fan here who might end up with Dalvin Cook. We got a Vikings fan down here. What do you guys think of the whole Dalvin Cook situation? Zach, are you hoping that the Dolphins sign Dalvin Cook to a team-friendly deal? Will, are you upset that they let him go? What do you guys think?
Will, I'll let you go first since this was your guy originally.
I think it's hard. I mean, fans, it's emotional, right? So it's like, Dalvin Cook and all that. He wasn't worth what they were going to pay him. That's just welcome to the modern NFL. And so, yeah, I wish he would have stayed. I wish they could have worked a deal. I also understand that he's a professional athlete and his chance to make the most money he can while he still has a career. So I don't fault him at all. I don't fault the Vikings or Dalvin Cook. I just have a hard time. And I think we see this with Saquon Barkley's deal. Like, the Giants are in a bad situation. Vikings were in a bad situation. Running backs, unfortunately, are a dime a dozen now. And you can get a guy in the 7th round that can be a RB1.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy when you look at, I think he's one of the only top 15 running backs from last season to have a free agent stamp next to his name if you were to go look him up right now. But, I mean, nothing but 1,200-yard seasons. And actually had his longest career run last year. So if you're asking me from a Dolphins perspective, yeah, throw him on the roster. I mean, at this point, surround Tua with every possible option, and Dalvin Cook is certainly fits in that category. Bring him back. He's a Florida State guy, so bring him back home and finish out the career in Miami and help us get to the playoffs.
Yeah, I think Dalvin Cook, he's a talented running back. Just at this point in his career, the Vikings can afford to pay him. But if he can go somewhere else and sign a deal that, makes sense for him and the team, maybe it's incentive-based, it's kind of what I'm starting to get the feel of is what his market's going to be. It's going to have to be incentive-based, whether it's carries, yards, touchdowns, playoff incentives, that kind of stuff. But I think that's the way his deal is going to be based out, whether it's in Miami or somewhere else. He's going to have to perform to get paid.
Yeah.
I think the Vikings –
there's offset language in that contract, too. So I get why he doesn't want to play for 6. He's trying to get to 8 or 10 because the Vikings are going to get some of that money back from him. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, no, the Vikings, they had, definitely backups that can do the trick. Alexander Madison, we've seen do good. And then you look at the Cardinals here who just released DeAndre Hopkins. You thought they could have been able to get something for him at least. I don't quite understand how, DeAndre Hopkins, who's probably a top 5 wide receiver in the NFL, all of a sudden he's been released. I get a contract was a lot, but a team would have been able to give up something for him, you would have thought. But now he's a free agent. My question for you guys is, where do you think he's going to end up? And where for fantasy do you hope that he ends up? For me, I hope he's a Chief. I have him in one of my dynasty leagues. I just traded for him, trying to win my 3rd championship in a row. I'm hoping, DeAndre Hopkins signs in a fantasy, relevant place where, like the Chiefs, he can be a wide receiver 1. Zach, where do you think he's going to go? Where do you want him to go as a fantasy player?
I like the landing spot in Kansas City. For fantasy, I think it not only is it a good scenario if he goes to a quarterback like a Patrick Mahomes, but I think there's also another scenario where if he goes with a team like the Tennessee Titans, who's completely void of wide receiver talent, DeAndre Hopkins at this point of his career is just nothing but a target hog. 9 games last season and 96 targets for 717 yards on a kind of like a laughing on their way down version of the Cardinals last year, right? It wasn't the same Cardinals we were used to. So if he lands in a place where he's without a doubt the number 1 guy, he's just even on a run first team like the Titans. I can see for fantasy, it's kind of like a flashback to his Houston days where he was playing with nothing but bum quarterbacks, but yet you still wanted him on your roster. So as long as he's, still a resemblance of himself, I think he's still fantasy relevant, but I do like the Kansas City landing spot. That would be kind of crazy and unfair for the Chiefs though.
Will, what do you think?
I'd love to see him go to the Browns. I think that would be a fun situation to watch. Where I think he goes, I think he goes to a team maybe we're not thinking. I think maybe the Chargers. They got cap space. It would be, what's the problem with the Chargers if their wide receivers get hurt, right? They need as much depth as they can get.
They need another wide receiver to get hurt?
Well, maybe they will all get hurt at once. I don't know. I'd like to see him with the Chargers. I think he holds out till. I think him and Dalvin, if they're smart, they wait till training camp and they wait and see who gets hurt.
Yeah,
and then take the best deal they can get.
I think that's a good deal for them. I think Hopkins at this point in his career, he definitely should be looking towards, I want to win a championship. Cook, running backs aren't quite in that same realm, or wide receivers, right. They can kind of pick and choose where they want to go. Running backs just kind of have to go where the money is. But I think I would love to see Hopkins and Patrick Mahomes together on the field. I think that would be fantastic. As I said, I traded for him this offseason. People thought he was going to get cut. I just really hope that can all come together because that would make my team absolutely unbeatable. But like I said, today we have this is redraft. We've been talking a lot about dynasty lately, but redraft, we're talking about some guys that we really like. At their current ADP, obviously ADPs are going to change up in 2 draft weeks. So maybe these are guys that, going to kind of raise up your draft rankings. After you watch this show, obviously you're going to be like, damn, I really want to get these guys on my roster. But, maybe ADP-wise, by the time August comes around, these guys will be a little bit higher. But currently, I'm going to start it off at the running back position. And I'm going to go with J.K. Dobbins, currently going as the RB19 on Sleeper. And that's an extreme value for me, a guy who's averaged, just look over his past career when he's been healthy. He finished the season averaging 8 yards per carry, 9 yards per carry, 5 yards per carry, and over 5 yards per carry. Those are extremely efficient numbers. People are looking at this new Ravens offense like they're going to throw the ball so much. And I hate to break it to you, Lamar Jackson can only throw the ball so much to be an efficient, elite offense. They're still going to have to rely on the run game. J.K. Dobbins is uber efficient. He's been uber efficient in this offense for so long. Their offensive line is really good, and I think that his efficiency continues on. As long as J.K. Dobbins can stay healthy for me, I see no reason why he can't be a top 12 running back this season. He's so efficient with his touches. They're going to get the red zone looks. Lamar Jackson obviously probably takes away from his touchdown upside that a couple of the other guys have. But at RB19, he's likely going to be your RB2 when you draft him. And if I can have J.K. Dobbins as my RB2, I'm extremely happy with that at RB19. I think that's great value. Zach, what do you think about J.K. Dobbins? Are you in on the Ravens offense on the running game? Are you out? What do you think?
Man, that's just I think he just kind of has a fatigue around his name at this point. Just kind of one of those guys that it just kind of, I don't know, it doesn't feel right. Like at a certain point, everyone is a value, and I do like your take. It makes sense, and you're right. We can joke about all the passing offense with Odell Beckham, but I mean, let's be serious here. It's it's Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. They're going to run the ball, and they're going to do the option, all these things to scheme up Lamar now that he's got his money. They're not going to have him less involved, right? So at a certain point, everyone's a value, and if you're going to get the starting running back for a run-heavy team, that's a solid. I think he'll be much higher than that come closer to the season, but yeah, I like it.
Will, what do you think about J.K. Dobbins?
I have him in a lot of leagues, and I will want to draft him again. I think it's great value. I think as long as Dalvin Cook and Zeke and a couple of guys are hanging out there, his value is going to be depressed in the drafts, and you may end up getting a top 10 fantasy running back late in the draft. Because I think people, like Zach was saying, right, you're kind of like, if there's a little bit of fatigue, is he injured? What's going on? And then you think, well, when is it they sign Dalvin? When is it they sign Zeke? What's going to happen? Yeah, I like the pick, Zach. I think it's a good value where he's going.
Jeff, anything you want to say about J.K. Dobbins? Welcome in. So you just joined us here. You like J.K.?
No, stop saying those bad words in my presence. J.K. Dobbins, I liked him when he first came out, but as you know, my saying is availability is the best ability, and he has not been too available too much. And the Ravens always seem to find him running back from somewhere else. I like the kid. I believe he is from East Carolina, the kid that they picked up but ended up signing. I actually like that kid, and I think he could. Not saying he's going to take anybody's job to start off, but he's one of those guys that could surface like a Gus Edwards, just comes out of nowhere and starts stealing carries. And then, Lamar's always there as well. So, those goal line vultures, kind of make me pump the brakes on J.K. Dobbins. If he's there later in some later rounds and you need a possible starting running back, then yeah, but nobody I'm reaching for.
Well, let's just remember what Jeff said at the beginning there when he was talking about availability is their best ability. None of the guys Jeff has on his list played a full season last year. None of them played 17 games. So let's just keep that in mind when Jeff's talking about some players later. But Zach, let's start with your first player, who Jeff, I'm assuming, is going to like. Zach, who is your first value?
Yeah, let's go. He's becoming a perennial draft day value, and that's DK Metcalf, wide receiver for the Seattle Seahawks. I had a post the other day. I think DK Metcalf ranked in the top 3 as far as red zone targets, but he had an abysmal touchdown season. So positive regression in that direction. You add Charbonnet and Jackson Smith and Jigba, and that may crowd the wide receiver room, but in my opinion, it just tilts the favor in DK Metcalf. Smith and Jigba is an explosive player, and let's get those red zone targets again with the same quarterback, Geno Smith, to DK, and I think you have a better season. I still think he finished as a top 20 wide receiver last year, and I want to say he basically had the same ADP last year. So he's just a continuous value from last year carrying right onto this season again, just because I think people are worried about the target share with the addition of JSN. But yeah, I don't have the ADP directly in front of me. I don't know if you can pull that up, Zach, but I'd imagine it's going to be a 3rd round pick or a 4th round pick probably.
Yeah, I mean, looking at DK Metcalf last year, the entire thing was oh my God, Geno Smith is their starting quarterback. And I mean, if you're going to be talking about that, I mean, last season, everyone was like, oh my God, Geno Smith was your starting quarterback. Like, that was a big deal. This year, everyone's worried about, JSN pulling up his current ADP is going 32nd overall. So that puts him into, late second, early first round or early third round pick. So I think that is definitely right on. He's going at around wide receiver 15 ish. And if you look at his previous finishes, DK Metcalf at the wide receiver 15 is going to be a value. To me, DK Metcalf is the most talented wide receiver on that roster. He's the biggest wide receiver on that roster, and he's the fastest wide receiver on that roster. Tyler Lockett is so good when it comes to route running and in the red zone. We don't know what we're going to get out of JSN, so for me, I do agree that DK Metcalf, people are continuing, no matter what it is, they'll find a reason to apparently not want to draft him in fantasy, and he will be a draft day value. Jeff, what do you want to say about DK Metcalf? You're a resident Seahawks fan. Let us know.
A lot. We finally have a number 3 receiver, which means there will be no more double teaming DK Metcalf. So that is where I think a lot of people saw him in the red zone last year. A lot of times there was somebody over the top and underneath. Now they won't be able to do that. So I think there's going to be a lot of hell to pay around that red zone this season because they're going to, again, have to watch the run. And now they're going to have to watch out when you have basically what could be 2 Tyler Lockett's now running around on the field, leaving my man, Big DK, who can handle him one-on-one.
Hey, I mean, we did you guys a favor. We took Jalen Ramsey off your hands, so you don't have to see him twice a year now. So that should statistically improve DK in those 2 games right there.
I mean, you look at the game Seattle played against the Rams. Jalen Ramsey was never really a problem for DK Metcalf. He always seemed to ball out against the Los Angeles Rams. So.
True. The only one that kind of had the size, though, that could kind of give DK issues. Right. I don't see that now. I don't see anybody in that NFC West that can stop him one-on-one. So I'm excited about his opportunities this season.
Let's go.
Yeah, Will, anything you want to add to DK Metcalf?
I love him. I think he's a good value. My only concern is the Seattle schedule this year. The NFC East, NFC West, AFC North, the last few weeks of their schedule, when you need your guys to give their best performances, makes me a little nervous. And so, Jeff, it's availability, but it's also who they're playing. So I don't know if I like the last couple of weeks of the Cowboys, the 49ers, the Eagles. They've got the Titans in there, okay, but then the Steelers. That Steeler game is going to be – it's in Seattle, but Steelers aren't no joke. And Tomlin will shut him down, and that's championship weekend. So I think I think he's having a good year. I think he'll give you good numbers early on. I'm just worried about him being a star part of your wide receiver rotation the last 5 or 6 weeks of the season when you're fighting to get in the playoffs or in the playoffs and had a great season, but then you have one bad game and it's done.
The only thing I'll say about those games is those are teams with strong defensive lines, but their secondaries aren't that great.
Cowboys?
Trayvon Diggs and who else?
Trayvon Diggs ain't covering.
And Gilmore?
Exactly. Who?
And Gilmore? Stephon Gilmore?
So Trayvon Diggs won't be able to eat the fact that he can't cover the wide receiver one.
But let's get back to Jeff's other point. Let's get back to Jeff's other point.
But Trayvon Diggs will make his point that he has to be on DK Metcalf, and DK Metcalf will eat.
And even if he eats, will Geno have enough time to throw? That's the question.
That's the question. And with that, we'll see what our offensive line is able to do.
Yeah.
I actually love the Steelers' defense this year. I think their secondary is going to be a little bit better, but they have nobody that can stop DK one-on-one.
Yeah, there's not too many people that can. Any closing remarks, Zach, before we move on here?
Let's go. Let's keep that. I love that 32. If it goes a little bit higher, it starts to get a little nerve-wracking, not going to lie. It was a little bit higher than I anticipated, but yeah, I still like 32.
Yeah, Jeff, let's move on to your next guy here, Saquon Barkley. at 13th overall. What do you want to say about Saquon here, Jeff?
Well, this was before he started playing, so maybe I won't play this year. Maybe I'll sit out. But, I was thinking with now having added receivers to that offense, another year underneath Dable, I think if he does show up, I think he's going to be really ready to put the league on notice. And I noticed I just did a mock draft, and I believe he was like the 10th or 11th running back taken. So, I've got a feeling I wouldn't let him slip that far if I know he's playing. I think he's healthy. I think he's still motivated. And I think in that offense, he's going to be, I was looking at the stats on his receiving yards. I did not know, he was very, very high up there in receiving yards. So kind of reminded me of maybe CMC ability somewhere in there. So that's why I like him. And I think I can get him as a steal in some drafts. Some guys are sleeping on him. So
yeah, he had 57 receptions last year on 76 targets, so he's definitely getting that PPR work. My only question for Jeff really is the whole best availability, or the best ability is their availability, but Saquon Barkley hasn't played a full season since 2018, and it's
but he's on the rise. He's played
2023.
To be fair, he had 2
he's on the
seasons
mid.
where he played 13 games, and for a running back in the NFL, 13 games is about all you can truly
to be fair to Jeff, he sat out the last game of last year because the Giants had already secured their playoff spot. But it still wasn't 17 games, so I don't know Jeff's argument over there about that whole thing. But I do like Saquon this year. I think, like I said, he was healthy for all of last year. He only sat out the last game because the Giants had already secured their playoff spot. So there was no point in him playing and risking getting injured. But yeah, as Zach said, 13. He only had the one real injury with the ACL. Just took a while to get back from that. But I do like Saquon. I feel like he's kind of going around where he should. Not sure I would consider him to be a value. I think he's going to play. He's not going to hold out. The Giants and Saquon aren't going to let it come to that. With the new CBPA, you can't hold out. It costs you more money than it's worth to hold out when it comes to actually training camps and preseason games and all that kind of stuff. It costs too much money to hold out for an entire season. So I think he'll play. I think ADP 13 coming in around that, RB6 range is probably where I would have him going. He's still only 26. And he's been explosive when he's on the field. So I like Saquon Barkley. Zach, Will, anything you want to add before we move on here?
He basically kind of like replicated his rookie seasons minus the receiving touchdowns. So it was great to see that he still has that juice as he did when he first stepped on the field in the NFL. It's got to be tough to watch Danny Jones get all that money and knowing that you're infinitely better as an athlete and a specimen of a human. You know what I mean? Like, it's crazy to think that goofy Daniel Jones is going to make way more money. But yeah, if he's on the field for give me 13 games of Saquon, even at that ADP, you're telling me I can get a stud wide receiver, come back around and snag Saquon Barkley, or if you have a higher pick in the first round, 12-team league, if he really is there at the 13th spot, that's I actually, or maybe it's late. You have to have a late pick, right? If you were, yeah. So, if you're back to back 12-13, started off with a high end wide receiver and then Saquon, it's a nice start to your draft. So I'm with you. I don't know exactly how much of a value it is, but I do love the outlook of Saquon if he actually plays football this year.
Will, what do you think?
I think Saquon's a chaos agent on draft day.
Yeah.
I think it depends the draft you're in. He could go RB3. He could go RB7. It just depends. And I think that's one of those guys you really got to be watching every day in your draft. If that contract situation's unresolved, they don't get a contract done by July 15th, then they can't. So then he's under that franchise tag, and you just I get nervous when running backs hold out because I think my gut is they're more likely to get hurt. I don't know the science behind that. It just makes me nervous. But I think he's just one of those guys that could be people are going to be high, lows, can be all over the place.
Yeah, I think to me, like I said, in this new bargaining agreement that the players have, Saquon will play. He'll be in training camp. Like the amount of money he's going to make on the franchise tag, he can't afford to sit out the entire season. Like it doesn't. The math doesn't make sense for him to sit out. So he'll play. You know, they're just using that as a current thing. He didn't even say he was going to sit out. He said you have to think about sitting out if it made sense for him, which it won't. But yeah, Saquon should be a good value. Will, let's talk about your first guy here. We're staying in the same division, same position. Who do you think?
I'm gonna go with Tony Pollard because I think right now on Fantasy Pros they got him going running back 9, ADP 21. Unless they sign somebody else, he is RB1.
Zeke's coming back.
Zeke ain't coming. Zeke's ego is they'll take him back, but not for Zeke's not going to take what the Cowboys are going to give him.
Right.
He'll take that in a couple months when you realize no one else is calling.
I just think Pollard's going to get overlooked in drafts. I get it. Got hurt. People are worried. But if he's sitting there at the third round, the end of the second, start of the third round, and he has the year we think he could have, he's going to be a steal that late in the draft.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's just how does he recover from the injury?
Yeah.
And do the Cowboys sign someone else? You know, there have been talks if Zeke can't get the offer he wants, he'll come back for whatever mid-range deal that they give him. I'm a little hesitant on Pollard just because of the fact that he is recovering from an injury, and you know the Cowboys. Jerry Jones can get someone back there. He'll get a big name back there because that's who Jerry Jones is. He doesn't care how good you are. You just need to have a big name to get him some big bucks.
I don't put Dalvin Cook still ended up there, to be honest with you.
Yeah, could happen. I mean,
he fits that offense better than Zeke.
He's Jerry Jones. Jerry Jones could do anything. I really don't think anyone, including Jerry Jones, knows what he's going to do next. That's what happens when you get old. You just kind of do whatever pops into your mind first.
Mm-hmm.
Zach, do you think Tony Pollard's a value there going at the RB9? Are you hesitant with the injury? What do you think?
RB9, that's a little rich for my blood, if I'm being totally honest. And that's just, personal kind of ranking situation. I don't know if I would have Tony Pollard is my RB9. Maybe I kind of haven't really dove too deep in the rankings yet, but it just seems like you're kind of looking for a bona fide RB1 workhorse kind of workload when I'm not sure if Tony Pollard has truly proven that yet over the course of his career. It's not like this is his second or third year in the NFL. I believe he's been 4 years in the NFL. So and with isn't there a running back that dad he's coach on the team, something like that? Deuce Vaughn's dad is a running back coach or something like that. So there's a lot of scenarios where Tony Pollard could lose some touches, but at the same time, what did he finish as running back last year? Was he
8?
Yeah,
RB8 he finished.
So you drafted him at his ceiling. I would have necessarily the situation, I guess, at that draft value.
Yeah, I think there is some risk, but if you truly believe Pollard can be the guy, I think he could return on his value. But let's move on here. We're going to stay at the running back position. A guy who was in Tony Pollard and Saquon Barkley's division last year, but now currently is going to be playing for my Carolina Panthers. Miles Sanders is currently going as the RB21. And I see a very clear path where Miles Sanders could be an RB1 this season. Look at a guy who's never averaged, less than 4.5 yards per carry. He goes to an offensive line that's been improving, and he should be able to see some clean holes. This is a team that made Donta Foreman look like an elite RB1 last year. This is also a team that will be able to utilize Miles Sanders in the passing game. like we saw from his rookie season where he had 50 catches. A rookie quarterback comes in a little bit undersized. He's going to be looking to dump it off to his running back when he can. The Panthers have talked about using Miles Sanders as a 3-down back. And, I've been a fan of Miles Sanders since he came into the league out of Penn State. And I'm really excited that he is a Carolina Panther because now I get to cheer for him. And he'll make me look great. When I say at RB21, I don't really think there's many. He could be an RB1 on a team where you go 0 running back and you end up with Miles Sanders as your RB1, but you already have 3 great wide receivers. And I think you're in an amazing position if that's the way it falls. Look at Donta Foreman last year for the Carolina Panthers. He played in the 17 games. It kind of took off to a rough start, but he had 900 yards because CMC was there for the first half of the year. But he had 900 yards, 4.5 a carry, and 5 touchdowns. And they were still able to get him and Chuba Hubbard involved in the passing game. So I think that this is a great opportunity for Miles Sanders to he never really got what he thought was his role in Philadelphia because Jalen Hurts was there and the receiving work wasn't there aside from his rookie year. Going to an offense that we know loves to feed the running back the ball. And in Frank Reich's offense that led Jonathan Taylor to be the RB1 because of that pass-catching work, Miles Sanders could easily be a top 12 running back, and that's a realistic outcome for me. And he's going as a late-end RB2. Zach, am I crazy here being a Panthers fan, or you see an outcome where he is easily an RB1?
You're crazy being a Panthers fan, but you're not crazy for your take on Miles Sanders. I do like it, but the only pushback is the rookie quarterback history with running backs kind of taking away some of that top-tier value. But if you're getting him as the RB21, that's a low-end RB2. I'm kind of leaning more towards the no RB build going into this season, just the way drafts are kind of shaking out with mock drafts. So I think if you do have Miles Sanders as your RB1, the money will certainly dictate that he's going to get a crazy workload this year. And you mentioned that they made Donta Foreman look so good, and people thought he was, left for dead, honestly, after the injury and couldn't really come back. And he was a fantasy darling last year. So I think if you kind of swap Miles Sanders into that role, the offensive line is pretty solid. I think it's really all to Bryce Young to not totally take away all of the fantasy goodness in that offense.
Yeah, and I think Bryce Young knows, he can't run the ball all the time. And we just saw Bryce Young, produce one of the most prolific running backs in the receiving game that we've seen in a while in Jahmyr Gibbs, who he was the lead in the passing game in Alabama, and I think that's something that we can kind of see translated into the NFL for Bryce Young because he's a smaller guy. If Bryce Young decides, I'm going to run the ball here and run the ball there, Bryce Young will be in the league for very long.
Smaller guy's an understatement.
Yeah, small. Yeah, he
might be the smallest of all time.
Yeah,
I was going to say, I think all 4 of us are bigger than Bryce Young.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
And by a substantial amount. So if he decides he's going to run the ball all over the field like Kyler Murray does, his NFL career is not going to be that long. But if he does kind of what he did in Alabama, stay in the pocket, and when things start to just dump it off to the running back, he can have a very successful career. And I think Miles Sanders is a great back for that. Jeff, Will, anything you want to say about Miles Sanders before we move on here?
No, I think that he I always say will surprise me because looking at him in Philadelphia, he had some decent seasons, but even when he wasn't getting the ball all the time, they would usually bring in Boston Scott or, whatever of the 12 running backs that they would have sometimes. And then he wasn't getting a full load, and he was still having those nagging toe injury here, pulled shoulder, and those are the injuries I hate on a running back. So where it's like nothing that, should keep you from playing, but with him it would keep him from playing, and it would be during the middle of the season. So if he can avoid those types of injuries and prove that he's an every down back in Carolina, I think he's going to be a steal.
Will, anything you want to add before we move on?
No, I think there's potential there. Carolina's intriguing. It's just the quarterback issue, right? If your draft is late in the preseason, you'll probably have a different view. Maybe you will if you are drafting earlier in the season than later.
Yeah. Miles Sanders, he's going to be great. We'll move on here. Zach, who do you want to talk about next as a draft day value?
Yeah, I'm gonna get gross with this one. Go Evan Engram. Yeah, I think I was
Tight end
looking
9.
I'm sorry. What was that
Tight end 9
from last season, or is that or is that
his ADP is tight end 9? He finished as like the tight end 5 last year.
Yeah. Yep. So that was kind of my point. And sometimes when you look at fantasy, it's hard to figure out why you're actually drafting some of these guys. We just kind of make up stories. And I guess the story I tell myself is that Austin Hooper's best season he ever had, Calvin Ridley was playing adjacent from him on the field. So now bring that back around for Evan Engram, who, had one of the best rookie seasons, maybe the best rookie season of all time, especially for fantasy, and Jacksonville offense that I think is kind of being slept on a little bit this year. I don't think people are taking them that serious. But I do think they stay in the upward trajectory overall, especially for fantasy. And I think Evan Engram continues to be a steady target for Trevor Lawrence as he continues to mature. So, yeah, that's kind of my reasoning. Bring Calvin Ridley back, and Evan Engram will eat over the middle.
Yeah, like I said, I was extremely high on Trevor Lawrence last year. I said he was going to be a top 12 quarterback. People like Will were like, no, that's a little too high for him. And, he ended up being like quarterback 8. Now it's kind of where he's going in drafts. But this year, my problem with where he's going in drafts is people think Trevor Lawrence is going to be a top 8 quarterback. People even, I think his ADP is probably quarterback 6 or something like that right now. So he can be a top 6 quarterback. Calvin Ridley's not being drafted till like the wide receiver 30. Christian Kirk's not going to like the wide receiver 50, and Evan Ingram's the tight end 9. So when you look at all these numbers, like Trevor Lawrence is going to be great, and we know he's not going to be great running the ball. He's going to be great, but people aren't valuing who he's going to be throwing the ball to. So to me, I think Evan Ingram's going to be a value. I don't think the addition of Calvin Ridley eats into his targets at all, and I'm in on Evan Engram this year at the tight end 9 as well.
Yeah, and if you're going to stay away from those top guys, you might as well take a shot on a guy who's at least has the athleticism and the ability, and has proven it. And last year, if he's going later than he finished, then that's generally a bet you want to take, right? You never want the opposite. You never want to draft a guy necessarily where he or higher than he finishes, rather. Yeah. So yeah, good value, I guess.
Will, what do you think?
I really like Engram, honestly. When I look at the ADP and you see he's going 8th, I get Kelsey, I get Andrews, I get Hawkinson. I can get Kittle, who I think is getting a little long, right? A little long there in his career. But the rest of the guys before him, Pitts, okay, that's all hype because it sure the heck can't be on performance, right? Waller, I really like Waller, but he can't stay healthy, right? And then you got Goddard in Philly. Okay, maybe. And then
wait, whoa.
I'll take Engram right now. To me, Ingram should be like tight end 4 or 5 at the worst.
Mm-hmm. I'm thinking
you're gonna get him late.
Dude, right? He's been around forever, and he's still only 28 years old. So he's like kind of in his like prime tight end years too.
And what happens in the draft, right? Especially if you're not doing an auction, you're snaking the draft. The top 3 tight ends will go, and then everybody's all like, "No, there's no value. I'm going to go over here and I'm going to take the 80th receiver, and Ingram's going to be sitting on your draft board."
Right.
And as Zach mentioned just before we move on here, Evan Engram has the athleticism of 80% of the wide receiver in the NFL. Yeah. Like, people forget the athlete Evan Engram is as well here. Like Evan Engram, 4.42. And I'm pretty sure I don't have the number in front of me. I'm about to Google it, but that's on par with Jackson Smith and Jigba's 40.
So what are you saying with that, Zach? What are you saying?
I'm just saying, Jackson Smith and Jigba is supposed to be the best thing we've ever seen. So Jackson Smith and Jigba,
route running in hands, not
he was officially clocked at a 4.48, and Evan
route running in hands, not necessarily speed. And I'll
Jackson
tell you what,
Smith and Jigba's
I will tell
probably
you what,
weighs
he's got better hands than Evan Engram.
50 pounds less than Evan Engram does.
JSN just caught a stray for no reason.
Well, just because Jeff's here, just because Jeff's here. But Jeff, let's move on to a guy I think we kind of talked about all of last offseason that you, for some reason, still believe in. This Russell Wilson guy. He thinks he's dangerous.
That's right.
Limited.
Why is he a value, Jeff? Why is he a value?
Because everybody is now afraid of Russ, and Russ is now with the new coach, a guy that can actually coach, a guy that actually still sees the potential, an all-pro in Russ, and Russ is one of those guys that is going to redeem his name and his position this season. Take it to the bank. And he also told me that's his new catchphrase. Take it to the bank. He's getting rid of Let's Ride.
I don't think he's ever going to get rid of his catchphrase. But
I love that. Take it to the bank. That needs to be a drop.
Take it to the bank.
Take it to the bank. That's it. Every time
We just gotta get a cut of Jeff saying that, and I feel like it works.
Yep.
It works perfect. That's gonna be a new. Every time Jeff says something, we're just gonna play that drop right after, and it'll be take it to the bank.
That's it.
Yes, gonna be cashing in.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
I mean, redraft. I was looking at his ADP. He's currently going as the quarterback 17, and at that position, I can't say I'm out on Russell Wilson. I feel like at that position as a quarterback 2. I'd be quite happy to have Russell Wilson there. I mean, he's got a chance. He's got the weapons around him. As a Panthers fan, his coach is probably the worst coach of all time. This guy likes to put bounties out on people's heads, and he wants to hurt the other team. Like, that's not really what I want to see out of my head coach. But he produced some great years for Drew Brees. So, I mean, I guess on the offensive side of the ball, Sean Payton's great. You really don't want him to have anything to do with your defense, because that's when suspensions and lost draft picks come into play. But I think where he's going right now, everyone seems to be out on him. And I know Jeff and I were the ones hyping him up last offseason. So I'd hate to be in a position this offseason where Jeff and I are both the only ones in on Russell Wilson. Zach or Will, could one of you say maybe Russell Wilson could be a value here?
Man, he's not even draftable in my opinion. No, honestly, like he's a good quarterback for in non-quarterback leagues. But no, I'm obviously joking. No, I honestly I kind of feel for Russ, because look, he loses Javonte Williams, right? He's got Nathaniel Hackett, who's an absolute joke of a human.
Yeah.
He has Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy, who may be the most overhyped humans to play the wide receiver position ever to exist, that he has to rely on some Hawaiian dude with beautiful curls at the tight end, Dulcich, over there all season long. That's his only option he has. Tim Patrick was injured, in the training camp, or you lost him early on?
He's back this year.
He's back. He's like 33 years old, and he's a wide receiver 3. So, like, more nonsense for Russell Wilson to deal with. So it's really not even a Russell thing. It's like, if Javonte can't come back and play at the overhyped, he's another overhyped player on the Broncos offense. It just seems like he doesn't have a lot of help around him. So maybe Sean Payton can kind of right the ship. But for me, it's tough to. I'm not in a ton of super flex leagues, so most one quarterback leagues I probably just won't have him on my team. But super flex, 2 quarterback leagues, that can be like he wins you a championship because everyone has the sour taste like I do, and you take the chance on him. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, we were talking about Jackson Smith and Jigba catching some strays here. Zach just called Tim Patrick 33 years old, and he's still in his 20s. He's
how old is he?
29 years old.
Oh my god! All right, so it's the same thing.
that's like 5. That's almost 5 years there. You just aged.
Wide receivers is the same. No, I know. I just feel like he's been in the league forever. It's always been like the flaming out.
There though. Guess who else? Marcus Callaway.
Wow. What a room.
I don't think that really makes your case for you, Jeff. Will, what do you think about Russell Wilson?
The only reason I would consider it is because of the coaching change. But then as Zach says, The offensive coordinator's a joke. But is the offensive coordinator really going to be doing anything besides getting coffee and drinking water?
No, Sean Payton there, no.
Sean Payton, right. So I just not sold on Sean Payton and Russell Wilson. I'm not sure Russell Wilson has the personality to handle Sean Payton. And so Russell's not Drew Brees. He's not. Personality-wise.
No, I mean,
it could be. It's. Can we agree it's boom or bust? It's either really good or it's really bad.
Yeah, I mean,
there's no middle ground.
We're both pretty cringy individuals, but I agree. Coaching wise, I think Drew Brees was probably a better fit for the Payton than Russ.
Yeah,
just about.
What?
Arm than Drew Brees. The only thing that lost is his running ability. He's not as elusive as he was when he was in Seattle. And hopefully they have a better line. Even the line actually went ahead and said, we messed up a lot last year. We were getting him killed back then. So we'll see what happens.
See, right there, that makes me nervous. That I just dropped him 5 spots, if that's true. That the O-line said, I come on, man. You're Russell Wilson, right? They gave up too much for him. When the kid they drafted in the first round, they gave up too much for him not to be top 3 quarterback in the league.
Yeah, and they're paying him.
And they're paying all the draft capital plus the cap space. If he doesn't start hot, this is going to be a problem in Denver. It's going to be a hot mess.
Russ was probably our most talked about player all of last season.
Yeah.
And the way Jeff's going here, he may be our most talked about player this offseason too. So
he's a genius, that Russell Wilson.
We'll have some more. We'll have some more time to talk about Russ here, but we do have to move on right now. Will, who is your second player you wanted to bring up here? Another running back. We're running back heavy on this value show so far. What do you think?
Robust.
Looking at Fantasy Pros, I'm a little shocked. The ADP. It's still first round, but it's Jonathan Taylor. He's running back 5. And I think his team is much better. I think the Jonathan Taylor we were hoping for last year is going to be this year. That's just me.
I'm out on Jonathan Taylor this year. Anthony Richardson is just a problem.
So will that put him as like overall? Because I know like RB5 and
10.
Honestly RB5 is fine and for me, but
10th overall. I'd rather have Saquon on my redraft roster than Jonathan Taylor.
Well, Saquon's going RB3
on yours. I'm looking at Sleeper where Jonathan Taylor goes ahead of Saquon. But I'd rather have Saquon.
I mean, on Fantasy Pros, it's Taylor, then Jacobs, Chubb, Henry, Pollard, Stevenson, Etienne, Harris. To me, there's a huge drop from Taylor to everybody else.
Yeah, right. Who you said follows after that? Jacobs, Chubb,
Henry, Pollard, Stevenson, Etienne, Harris, Hall, Walker. I think Walker's a little low, to be honest with you, but that's me.
I feel like the running backs as a whole, like that I feel like any other year that's a great spot for Jonathan Taylor, even with the rookie coming in. But I feel like the running backs are so gross this year. I don't know. Like you just listed all of those guys, and not one of them I was like thrilled to pick at the 10 spot, honestly. So that's tough.
So sleeper has CMC first, which I think everyone can pretty much agree on. Yeah. Austin Eckler is the RB2.
It's tough.
Okay. And then Taylor's third. Right. And then Saquon goes after. I'd rather have Saquon. Bijan, Derrick Henry, Nick Chubb. I'd rather have all them over Jonathan Taylor. I don't know. I think Anthony Richardson takes away from the touchdown upside Jonathan Taylor has. Anthony Richardson eats into the reception upside that made Jonathan Taylor the RB1. And although maybe this offense can be okay, Anthony Richardson as a quarterback scares me. Anthony Richardson wasn't a good quarterback in college. He wasn't good at throwing the ball. And he wasn't even that great at running the ball in college. Like people are saying Anthony Richardson, he's a great athlete.
He was.
What did he prove to you on the ground in college? Cam Newton, when he was the first overall pick, he had 1,000 yards on the ground. And that's what people are comparing him to.
It's unfair to compare anybody to Cam.
But that's what people are comparing him to is Cam Newton on the ground. Cam Newton had 1,000 yards. Anthony Richardson had 400 yards on the ground in Florida, and you only had 53% completion percentage. So you're going to run for 400 yards and only be able to complete 50% of your passes. That's not going to convert to the NFL. I don't care what you say. It's not.
I don't think that coaching staff is going to. They're gonna play. They're gonna shorten the game. They're gonna run the ball. Especially at the start of the season.
Yeah, well, you started your argument with saying that Anthony Richardson is going to take away the touchdown opportunities on the ground, and then you said he's bad at running the ball.
I do think he's bad at running the ball, but
I
2-yard line, are you going to give the guy who's 6'5" the ball, or the guy who's
is he bigger than Jonathan Taylor?
He definitely is. Jonathan Taylor's 5'10", 220 pounds.
That's just...
Anthony Richardson is much bigger than that. I'm about to pull it up here.
He probably
Anthony Richardson is 6'4", 244, so he's taller and bigger.
6'4", 2. He's like Micah Parsons, bro.
Yeah, he's same size as Cam Newton, but
so yeah, it might be a lot of RPO and up in Indianapolis. So
it's not even the RPO. It's just going to be RO. It's going to be running options.
I'm
does
in
Anthony
on this
Richardson
one.
keep it, or does Anthony Richardson hand it up?
I'm in on this one, Will. I'm with you. JT, I like this one. After thinking about those players and upside, you're banking on Chubb still having tread on the tires. Definitely don't want to stay away from Derrick Henry. Who else did you say was there?
Saquon, Bijan.
Well,
Saquon probably the only guy I would maybe take over Jonathan Taylor. Definitely not Bijan. That's too early for me.
I'm not sure about Jacobs. I'm not sure about Pollard. I mean, I like Pollard. I picked him, but if they're both on the draft board, I'm probably taking Taylor before I take Pollard.
I'm a little bit more sure on Jacobs than a lot of guys.
So
if he had went to a different team, I'd be with Jacobs. Raiders are a disaster, man. They just
you think
are.
Jonathan Taylor can get to the 20 touchdowns he needs to be the RB1 he was in?
No, I don't think. I'm not saying RB1. I'm not saying he's better than McCaffrey, but
no one's better than McCaffrey. But
I think the running back position is a crap show this year. I think you could take somebody with the third or fourth pick you think is going to be a lock, and it could be a disaster. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't be surprised if running back. With people who not just the average player, but if you're playing with people who seriously about fantasy football. I think we get close to draft day and the uncertainty of running back around the league, and there's still good veterans available in the free agent market. I think people are going to go wide receiver heavy the first couple of rounds, and quarterback and even tight end. We're going to be shocked who's sitting there on the board late second, early third round.
I'll tell you what. I was in a mock draft. Zach was in it as well on Monday. I'm pick 4. I'm all set, and I'm going to get Justin Jefferson. I never take a wide receiver in the way. And Justin Jefferson went with the third pick, and I panicked. I didn't know who to freaking take. I was just like, what? And I panicked myself into taking Derrick Henry, only because.
Holy shit!
Well, if we know anything about Jeff, Derrick Henry was always going to be the pick. It didn't matter.
Yeah, it's always been Derrick Henry.
I was just hoping Justin Jefferson wasn't there, so
in your redraft leagues, if it's not auction. You're hoping you're at the bottom. I think you're hoping you're at the bottom of the first round.
I mean,
I'd rather have 2 picks.
Unless you're in a standard league, I'm surprised. I think JJ is 101 in my opinion, and I feel like there's a big push. You'd be surprised. There'd be a lot of times where he goes 101 off the board.
Yeah,
there's still, especially when like Will's talking about, more of the people who've been doing fantasy for a while who are really more indebted. Like there still is a little bit of a sting with Christian McCaffrey and with that whole 49ers offense. Whereas like how can you dispute what Justin Jefferson has done since he's been in the NFL? And not only that too, but every single year it gets substantially better and better and better. And like his numbers are just, there's no reason to not take him 101. Like I said, unless you're in a standard league. If you're in full PPR, half PPR, I don't know. It's Christian McCaffrey is that would be the 101 for everybody else.
No, I'm taking JJ 1-1. There's no way I'm taking. Look, maybe this might be the first year in a long time with fantasy football the drafts are going to be crazy. Like
Yeah.
the last couple of years, it was kind of like you knew
It
the
was JT
suspense,
101 last year, right?
right? The suspense was rounds 5 and beyond, right? Because you're kind of like, okay, who's going to take what? Who's going to take a leap and reach up and grab a rookie early or something like that? The first round is going to be, it's going to be crazy. It's just going to be nuts.
You're right. That's why I was saying earlier. It'd be the first year I really considered going wide receiver heavy in the earlier rounds. So
Yeah.
you guys brought up what J.K. Dobbins and Miles Sanders, who are both potential slotted RB1s that I can get after getting some wide receivers, and shoring up. Like, run through the running backs from last year. I know we're getting off topic, but like, what did the running backs in the first round do last year? Virtually nothing, right?
I mean, Christian McCaffrey, if you listened to me last year, took the 101. You were extremely happy with.
You just had to wait 6 weeks for it, but it finally it came to fruition.
But he ended up as the RB2. So if you took him at the RB1 and you got 8 touchdowns,
but Zach, the question is, how many people who drafted CMC early last year got scared in week 3 or week 4 and traded him?
I can tell you, and I rode with Christian McCaffrey to championship.
You did.
Absolutely, I did.
I know you did. But I'm saying there was a lot of people who picked him high that were like, oh my God, I made a mistake. Let me see what I can get for him.
And all those people are the same people hyping him up this year, and I don't understand.
Agreed.
Makes no sense. Christian McCaffrey is the RB1 to me, but the people who just pick a guy and then they're like, oh no, I don't want this guy, and then they're like, oh no, this next year this guy's gonna be great. Like, just come on, make up your mind. Do you like this guy? Do you not like this guy? What's going on here? I don't understand, but we do have to move on here. We got a couple more people we want to talk about. We kind of talked about this team a little bit earlier. One more of my values, a guy who, if you're going to go running back heavy earlier on and you're kind of in those later rounds, he's currently being drafted as the wide receiver 39 off a rough rookie year, and that's Treylon Burks. I am fully in on Treylon Burks this year. As long as they don't sign DeAndre Hopkins, he's going to be the wide receiver 1 for this team. Whether it's whoever's throwing in the ball, Ryan Tannehill, Treylon Burks is the clear wide receiver 1 on his team, in my opinion. From what I saw on the field last year, he had what it takes. Just dealt with some injuries. So I think once he's on the field, he is their wide receiver 1. They didn't really invest anything so far in free agency and in the draft in that wide receiver position. Maybe if they bring in DeAndre Hopkins, Treylon Burks, even at wide receiver 39 with DeAndre Hopkins there, Treylon Burks could easily be a wide receiver 3 with DeAndre Hopkins there. I don't see a reason why he can't be. This is a guy that the Titans felt comfortable enough trading away A.J. Brown for.
How'd that work out?
I'm pretty sure that guy was a wide receiver 4 last year. So I think Treylon Burks, he's dealt with the asthma. I think that's going to be under control. I'm in on Treylon Burks this year. If you can end up in your draft with J.K. Dobbins, Miles Sanders, and Treylon Burks, and you made none of those picks in the first 3 rounds, I think you're absolutely killing it. And those are my 3 value guys. And I'd be quite happy to end up a draft with them. Are you guys hesitant on Treylon Burks because he didn't break out last year, really? Or you think he's got the opportunity this year because he's still their wide receiver 1?
I always take a wide receiver 1. If I'm getting low in the draft, I always see who's the first option. But unfortunately, it's almost like a wide receiver on the Chiefs because they're not the first option. Clearly, they're
really going to display my guy, and then the next guy you're going to talk about is a wide receiver for the Chiefs.
What's that?
So you're going to display Treylon Burks because he's not the wide receiver 1 option, and the next guy you're going to bring up as a draft value is on the Chiefs.
Because my guy that is on the Chiefs has already displayed that he has big play and number 1 potential. This guy has not done that yet, and he's on a team where they very rarely throw the ball.
Man, I can't wait to hear about MVS next.
Exactly.
After that, they're in trouble. They've already said Will Levis, and we already know about Malik Willis. They're no quarterback. So if anything happens to Tannehill, Derrick Henry will be running the ball. Derrick Henry might be playing quarterback.
I think the best thing that happens for Treylon Burks is Ryan Tannehill gets hurt and Will Levis comes in, and I know he's a tough figure to like, but he just if you just watch film on Ryan Tannehill and Will Levis in the past couple of years, he's 100% a better quarterback at this point of their careers. So if Will Levis does come in, he has a YOLO mentality. He's like he has the arm to absolutely launch it 94 yards in one pass, but he also has the headspace to throw an interception to a defensive lineman.
May I compare him to a Jameis Winston?
Yeah, he's a lesser athlete, Jameis Winston, but with a probably stronger arm. Honestly, he's pretty yoked up, but that would be the best case scenario for Treylon Burks, is that they just kind of go YOLO style, and they have nobody else. They have nobody else to throw it to besides Westbrook, Keenan, and I don't even know who else is on the team, to be totally honest. And I usually know at least the first 3 wide receivers, and I couldn't tell you who their wide receiver 3 is. So yeah, I like that Treylon Burks. He was pretty touted last year, and I don't know, developed asthma as an adult. Maybe kind of a red flag, but yeah, I like it.
Will, would you like to add anything here? Next, we're going to go to Jeff's player because
let's just go on. Let's
all right, Jeff. Jeff,
all right,
who is this player who's not the wide receiver 1 on their team because they're not the number 1 target, but they've somehow proven in their short career that they're so amazing?
McKinnon.
Nope.
A guy who has only had 39 receptions as a career high in his NFL career, but he's somehow proven he's elite.
There were stretches when he played for the Giants where this guy was winning people games. We're talking about Kadarius Toney. We are talking about Kadarius.
Take it to the bank.
I wish I had the sound effect because I would have
with Pat Mahomes. He has the ability to become the wide receiver 1 on a team that heavily throws the ball behind Travis Kelce, who is option 1, or if you want to call him PE wide receiver 1/1. But if you're looking at the actual wide receiver 1, Sky Moore has not proven himself. Going to get with the other rookie that was hurt. We know the other what's your guy, Zach? The guy that you always complain about dropping the balls, who still kind of drops the balls.
MVS.
So by default, I'm looking in this offense, I'd rather take him over someone like Treylon Burks.
No.
Yes. In that offense, he's in the Chiefs' offense. They throw the ball most of the time. I'm going to go ahead and, if I'm that far in the draft, down there, I'm going to take a chance on him. Patrick Mahomes has talked about his talent, what they've been working on in the offseason. Andy Reid has said that if we can get the ball in his hands, this guy is a weapon. So as long as he can keep that hamstring intact.
But Jeff, isn't your best ability your availability?
It is.
And how many games has Kadarius Toney played in the last 2 years?
Ability for him is being in that offense right now, the place that he wants to play. When he played, nobody wanted to play for the Giants when Joe Judge was there. So he was like, I'm not going out here risking my life and limb and my football career and play for this team with a quarterback that really can't for me after he showed what he can do. Does anybody here not remember what he did for a stretch about 4 or 5 games as a Giants number 1 receiver?
But he's not the number 1 receiver anymore. I'm pretty sure that guy's Travis Kelce.
I do, and I remember that first game with the Giants where Kadarius Toney looked like a created Madden player, where the way he was just moving. So yeah, from a pure ability perspective, I do like Kadarius Toney. 19 games in 2 seasons, and I think he left 12 of those early with a hamstring injury or something like that. So I don't know, it's tough, but if he does take a step forward and he really can actually just live up to his potential, and he kind of just gets his kind of head to like a little bit together, he kind of seems like he may be a bit of an odd character too. So I think if you can kind of, mature a little bit, the ability is definitely there. And what better offense do you want to be on besides having Patrick Mahomes as your quarterback? So I like to gamble. At 90, I think ECR, like ADP for fantasy is like 93 overall.
Sure.
So that's
one of those guys that's a big stash that if he blows up, it's like when you're late.
Yeah, I mean, I was never a fan of Toney coming out of college. So, I mean, I'm not the biggest fan. I think he's probably the third best wide receiver on the Kansas City Chiefs, in my opinion. I think you can get Sky Moore 20 spots later. You can get Rashee Rice like 22. Not even 20 spots later. You can get Sky Moore 20 wide receiver spots later. You can get Rashee Rice like 22 wide receiver spots later. And I can't pay up for Kadarius Toney. He hasn't shown me that, as you said, Jeff, he can be on the field. And I never liked him. So combination of those two things.
Pony up, baby.
Yeah.
go.
Christian Watson and so
Sky Moore is the best wide receiver on that team right now.
And I'm going to say right now, Rashee Rice is number 2.
Well, there you go.
If you've seen him play, he is real.
He is. And you take both of them and see which one pans out. But I
Sky
also
Moore.
in the ability of Toney and the way that they're planning on using. Remember, just like it was Sky Moore, but they also use Toney out of the backfield at times as well. So Swiss Army blade type guys playing all over the field.
I think you got to look at who's going around him.
No. We're not bringing Cordell Patterson into this conversation.
Oh my goodness.
Not happening.
There it is.
Oh.
Cordell Patterson. I love
Which
it.
means he's just going to be a hindrance to Sky Moore and Rashee Rice in this offense, is all I'm hearing. He's going to be Swiss Army knife cutting up your fantasy team when you're starting Kadarius Toney and he puts up 0 points. Zach, what did you want to say? I feel like you had some.
I was just going to say, like, who's going around him? Like, who's being drafted near Kadarius Toney?
This is what I was pulling up right now. So Treylon Burks, and then this is just wide receivers. So Treylon Burks, JSN, Jordan Addison, Jahan Dotson, Kadarius Toney. So there's 3 wide receivers between those guys.
Taking all of those guys for Toney, but
exactly. And then after Toney, Brandon Cooks, who's the wide receiver 2 for Dallas, Juju, wide receiver 1 in New England, Michael Thomas, wide receiver 1-2 in New Orleans, Gabe Davis, Quentin Johnson, Cortland Sutton, Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman, Jameson Williams, Alan Lazard, Odell, Elijah Moore, Adam Thielen's going behind him. And then, like I said, 20 spots below him, Sky Moore, Rashee Rice, Jonathan Mingo. Can't do it.
All right.
I can't do it. Zach,
I hear you.
You're the most impartial person here. What do you think of those guys being drafted around him?
I probably have I like all the guys at first.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe Zay Flowers would probably. Honestly, at this point, you could just put Kadarius Toney in that group too. But you're really just going up for upside there. It's not really anything real projected volume you can predict for any of those guys really. So it's like, for me, I'd rather go rookie wide receiver I'd rather bet on the unknown with like a Zay Flowers, something like that, and just get that crazy explosiveness where you don't really know what you have with Kadarius Toney, but you kind of do. And he's going to give you a bunch of zeros. He's going to give you a bunch of zeros. You know what I mean? But he may give you a 40-point week, because he catches like a touchdown and has like 3 end arounds or something. I don't know. But like, he's definitely going to give you some duds, and he's probably going to be a headache on the roster just because you guys were saying it earlier. The wide receiver for the Chiefs, we were trying to figure it out all last season too. Couldn't really figure it out. It was Juju and ultimately Kelsey, but yeah, it's tough.
It definitely was, but we do have to move on here. We got one more guy we're going to talk about. Will, who is the last guy you want to bring up?
Olave with the Saints. Look, I think he's going to be the clear wide receiver one.
Mhm.
I think he's going to put up good numbers. I think he's going to be the focus of the offense. And when I see him going wide receiver 14, yeah, there's a couple guys in there. I'm just not going in front of him. I'm kind of like, I don't know. I wouldn't make that choice. That's just me. I think he's undervalued right now.
So
for multiple
last
reasons.
season, last offseason, you were our resident Derek Carr hater.
Yeah, Derek. Anybody on the Raiders, I'm not a fan of.
I was too.
But you hated on Derek Carr last offseason. So what makes you think he can produce a wide receiver one in Chris Olave?
I think the biggest problem for Derek Carr is I think people's expectations are unrealistic. They've made him into something he's not. And when they got Devontae Adams, they made him into Aaron Rodgers and Aaron Rodgers prime. And we all knew that was going to happen, especially with a dysfunctional team like the Raiders who can't still get their act together. So I think he gets a.
But Adams was still the wide receiver 3 in PPR, wide receiver 2 in standard.
I'm just telling you, I think there was a lot of pressure. There was a lot of hype on the Raiders players going into last season. And they did okay, but it was just unrealistic to me. So I think Carr, and I think outside of fantasy, the real fan pressure on Carr last year, I think, was crazy. Right? I mean, the expectation of the Raiders last year was just, okay, whatever. So I think Carr gets a new fresh start in New Orleans. I don't think there's any expectations from the NFL world about what the Saints are going to do this year.
Just the Saints fans. The Saints fans think they're about to win the Super Bowl.
They might be right.
They're not right. I can almost guarantee you that.
I'd hate to hate on another man with a red beard, but Derek Carr is certainly an upgrade from Andy Dalton for sure. And Olave's still, it's just like he's one of those guys that can make your week with like 2 catches. He has that field stretching ability. I don't know if you guys remember that play last year where he his head bounced off the ground. I don't know if you remember, it was like the back corner end zone. It was an incredible catch. My man lost consciousness but did not let go of the ball. And I remember he went to the blue 10 and it took 20 minutes, but the fantasy points finally rolled in. So I absolutely love this pick. Michael Thomas is a great decoy at this point of his career. Jamal Williams in the backfield, right? And then you have Derek Carr. So this is kind of like the Raiders light, it kind of feels like. And, maybe he's not the wide receiver 3 or wide receiver 2 like Devontae Adams was last year, but clearly Derek Carr at least has something left to support somebody like that. So, yeah, you got Olave at 14. You said wide receiver 14 or overall 14?
Wide receiver 14.
Wide receiver, yeah. So wide receiver 14, I think you can definitely get a return on that.
I had a question for you, Zach. DK Metcalf, wide receiver 13. Chris Olave, wide receiver 14. Which one would you rather have?
That's tough. I'm probably still going to go DK, only because for me, he's more of a sure thing than Olave. Definitely, I wouldn't fault anybody for picking either. You know what I mean? At that point, you're kind of separating hairs. But I think,
Yes, I hate to say this, but I'd rather bet on Geno Smith and the Seahawks offense than Derek Carr and the Saints offense. To me, without Sean Payton in New Orleans, I have no idea what exactly to expect from this offense. As much as I hate on Sean Payton, you knew what you were going to get. You were going to get those catches out of the backfield for the backs and those quick, easy passes to Michael Thomas and all that kind of stuff, which produced fantasy points for Drew Brees throughout his career. He's not there anymore. Dennis Allen is the coach. We don't know if Alvin Kamara is going to be there this year. Is he going to play? Is he not going to play? How many games is he going to play? Jamal Williams is there. They just drafted another running back. Michael Thomas is coming back. What will Michael Thomas be? Juwan Johnson's there. They brought in
out for that kid.
They brought in what's his name from Las Vegas at the tight end position there, who just is currently recovering from cancer.
Foster Moreau.
Foster Moreau.
Yeah.
I don't want to draft any Saints players. They're one of the few offenses. I get Chris Olave last year was fantastic when he was on the field, but I have no faith in what we've seen from the Saints coaching staff. They could not figure out last year that Jameis Winston was their best quarterback on their roster. They kept playing Andy Dalton, even though anyone who'd ever watched football before knew Jameis Winston gave them a better chance to win games than Andy Dalton did. And I don't know, I feel like I'm hating on the NFC South more than they probably deserve, but I think that the Saints coaching staff and the Falcons coaching staff at this point,
except for one team.
Yeah, it's funny how that's the one division you kind of hate
I
on a
think
little
that
bit.
the Falcons coaching staff with Arthur Smith, I think, is one of the worst coaching staffs in the league when it comes to fantasy. And I think that the Saints is going to be as well. So, I don't know. I think that there's guys going behind Olave I like. And like I said, when you pair him up against a guy like DK Metcalf who's going right beside him, I think I'm taking DK Metcalf. Jeff, anything you want to add there, Jeff?
No, I think Olave is going to be still one of those guys that's a great possession receiver. That's the only reason why I would take DK more, because he's more of a red zone threat. And I am right with you. Do not trust Dennis Allen at all. I'm surprised he's still there, to tell you the truth. I thought he was going to be gone. But I do think Derek Carr could be better than what they've had at the quarterback position over the last two seasons. So I'm waiting to see. I always wait to see who he has chemistry with during training stuff. From what I've heard, he's been having great chemistry with Juwan Johnson, out of all people, who is a converted tight end from a wide receiver. So big guy, everything else kind of gives you in the mold of both Darren Waller and, Devontae Adams. So who knows? That could be his go-to guy. But, I never put money against Ohio State receivers. So although they did say JSN has better hands than Chris Olave, but that's for another day.
Yeah, Jeff never puts his money against Ohio State wide receivers, and that's why he's out so much money betting on Michael Thomas. So.
I was going to say, up until a few years ago, that was not a good bet to take.
No, it was not.
But, yeah, I don't know. I'm just real hesitant on that Saints offense. I feel like Devonta Smith is going after Chris Olave, and I feel like Smith is safer.
Yeah.
It's just it's one of those offenses where I have zero clue. Like, you look at the Patriots offense, we don't know what's happening at their wide receiver position. I look at the Saints offense. Is it Michael Thomas, Chris Olave? I have no clue. The Falcons offense, I don't want any piece of that offense except for maybe Bijan. Like, there's just a few offenses in the NFL where I'm like,
that's when you just got to use recency bias. Like, what has Michael Thomas done for you in the last 3 calendar years? Not much. So
But
what did Chris Olave do for people last year? A ton with a lesser quarterback.
Derek Carr will pick his guy. And if his guy is not Olave,
I mean, he was able to spread the ball out with Hunter Renfrow, Darren Waller. Like he did have. He supported two. What do you have? Amari Cooper and Crabtree at one point. It was his MVP season. So he can spread the ball, and we'd be lying to ourselves if we thought he wasn't a major upgrade from Andy Dalton.
he is.
Yeah.
So it's like at a certain point, these are still NFL offenses. You have to kind of sift through. Like someone has to bring in the target share. And
their schedule's not.
And
part of this, I think sometimes we forget in fantasy is you can have some great players who may not have a great year just simply because of the way the schedule falls. And the Saints don't have a hard schedule this year. They don't. And the Saints are going to probably be in a lot of shootouts. So the points are going to go somewhere. And I do think Derek Carr, as much as I have a hard time with the Raiders because it's always all this hype and the fan base is crazy. Right. And, they are, it's just unrealistic. For Derek Carr, I think he's a good person. I think for him, it's probably one of the best breaks that happens in his career, being able to go to the Saints.
If you went to the Saints 3 years ago, yes.
There's no pressure on Derek Carr at all.
Right. And I still think the Saints might have the best defense in that division.
From the NFL, there's no pressure, but as someone who's a fan of the NFC South, Saints fans are expecting them to run away with this division. If they don't run away from this division, they're going to be all up in Derek Carr's business because they believe that they have the best team. They believe they have the best defense, the best offense, and they believe that they're going to be a serious playoff contender. The NFL fans, they don't believe that. But I can guarantee you Saints fans believe that this is their year. They're going to win the division by 4 or 5 games. And I don't think they will.
A lot of games got to be played.
A lot of games got to be played. You ain't lying about that.
I'd bet more money on Baker Mayfield.
Oh, God. Whoa. Oh, God, no.
Whoa.
Being a decent fantasy quarterback than the Saints running away with this.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of bias about the NFC South.
There is, but I'm betting on Baker Mayfield, dude, guy who you guys all know I hate.
Oh, Derek Carr is going to outplay Baker Mayfield.
He'll outplay them
on the bench.
But the Saints coaching staff is that bad? I believe the Saints will crumble and fail this year.
Well, there's going to be a lot of that happening. That's be South. I think Kyle Trask might be running on in by week 4 or 5.
Possibly, but
yeah,
I would take Arthur Smith running my offense as the head coach than what the Saints have right now in Pete Carmichael and Dennis Allen. Like I don't trust the Saints coaching staff. You can't look at what we've seen from the Saints without Sean Payton and truly believe that they can make Chris Olave a top 8 wide receiver. I don't see it. I do not.
Well, wait. See, you're moving the goalpost.
I was gonna say we liked him at 14, not 8.
Right.
You like him at 14, but to like him at 14,
wide receiver 14, not draft 14.
Yeah, but to like him at 14 means you have to see a realistic opportunity where he could be the wide receiver 8. Like in your mind, there's a chance he is, right?
Yes.
I think he's a chance he's a top 10 wide receiver, yes.
I don't see it.
Okay.
I mean, his quarterback just put up wide
if they
receiver
fire
3 last
their
year.
head coach by week 5, Chris Olave could be the wide receiver 1 throughout the rest of the season.
Look, I think Amon-Ra St. Brown's a good wide receiver. I don't think he's better than Olave. I'll just be honest with you.
Talent-wise, no.
No.
Will he score more fantasy points? Absolutely.
Oh, look. Wait. Oh, let me tell you something. It depends which quarterback shows up for the Lions.
Jared Goff's a better quarterback than Derek Carr.
That may be true, but which Jared
person just a few years apart.
Which Jared Goff shows up?
The difference is that Jared Goff and Amon-Ra have the rapport.
Jared Goff puts up stats.
That's the only difference. But who knows? Derek Carr and Chris Olave could be best friends by week 3 of this year, and we look back and go,
when
he did
James
pick his guy.
And starting for the Saints.
I mean, honestly,
James Winston's still on that roster.
T. Higgins.
James Winston has a better arm talent than Derek Carr does.
T. Higgins go before Olave? I wouldn't do it.
Feels gross to be stuck with that decision. What is Amon-Ra? He's got to be what? Wide receiver 12, wide receiver 10?
No, wide receiver 9.
So wide receivers Amon-Ra, Jalen Waddle, Garrett Wilson, T. Higgins, DK Metcalf, Chris Olave. And then it goes Devontae Smith. I'd rather have over Olave. Debo, Keenan Allen, Amari Cooper, Hopkins, McLaurin, Ridley, DJ Moore.
Yeah, I mean, I guess at that point of the draft, you're looking at the board, but if you're
at that point in the draft is when we go back and we draft J.K. Dobbins and Miles Sanders.
Because it's all wide receiver. It's no more wide receiver ones. I mean, it's all guys sharing time. But Chris Olave has probably the better chance of those group of guys of being the wide receiver 1 for his team.
Right. Yeah.
You know, Devonta Smith is not going to be the wide receiver 1 for his team. His numbers last year are almost like they'd be very tough to repeat those numbers from last year. Both him and AJ Brown had like 60% of like the share of the entire team. Like it was ridiculous, you know?
Yeah.
Whereas like Olave is just like 2 big plays for you.
Yeah. And look, and I love Waddle. I do. I hope I can draft him. But it's hard to see how the touches get split, right? When you get that point in the draft, I'm looking who's a wide receiver 1 who I think has a better quarterback this year than he had last year. At that point in the draft, yeah, pick 32. Yeah, it looks pretty good.
Yeah, definitely don't like Debo there. That's way too high for Debo.
And Garrett Wilson, you talk
Garrett
about
Wilson's easily higher than Chris Olave.
It's a lot of speculation.
I'm betting my money on Aaron Rodgers.
Aaron Rodgers is cooked.
Garrett Wilson could be a top, depending on which Aaron Rodgers shows up, Garrett Wilson could be a top 5 wide receiver. Easily.
Could be, yeah.
But the Jets don't have a time machine to get Aaron Rodgers when he was good.
But so, I'm still taking Aaron Rodgers at this point in his career over Chris Olave or over Derek Carr.
It's a net negative.
It's a net positive. I'm out on the Saints. But we do have to end it there. No more New Orleans Saints. No more Cordero Patterson.
No!
You'll have to come back another week, I'm sure, without fail.
We're going to name
Cordero
Patterson studio.
Russell Wilson. They will all be brought up again. Yeah, they're pretty much the same person. Cordell Patterson and Russell Wilson. They're about on the same level there.
Oh my God.
So yeah, we'll end it there. We'll talk about those guys some more. I hope you guys enjoyed. We'll have a show next week. Guys, we're not quite in on at their ADP. So maybe it'll be some more overrated guys. I might have to bring up, guys like Cordell Patterson. I'm pretty sure wherever he's going, I don't
You don't like his ADP of undrafted.
It doesn't matter. He could be the RB 400. I'm not taking Cordell Patterson in any drafts.
Well, we know Russell Wilson's
too soon.
On your list.
Reach.
Exactly. So we'll have some more fun conversations next week for sure. Hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you guys all for joining. Thank you, Zach, Will, and Jeff. We'll see you guys again next week. Have a good one.
Have a good one.
All right, guys.
Let's ride.